Hi everyone, this is NUSensei. As you can see, I'm holding the Mandarin Duck Phantom. And many of you know this because a lot of you requested a review of this bow, which I've posted a while ago. And a lot of people came from another YouTube channel, Survival Lilly, who also uses this bow. Now, a few days ago, Lilly posted a self-reflection video talking about her archery technique and her improvements, notably in clarifying why she chooses to use a rather unorthodox high draw, which starts quite high and she pulls it down like this. So what I want to do in this video is to add some insight and extend the discussion. The risk with this sort of video is that sometimes people can draw the wrong conclusions from otherwise correct sources or correct references. So for those who are looking at learning from Lilly or commenting in a video, I want to add a few more thoughts so that if you are going to attempt the same technique or teach yourself archery, then some of the things might work for you, others might not. I want to first begin by making a quick comment on injury, because Lilly makes it very clear in her video that she has a shoulder injury. It was a muscle impingement, and those things can be extremely painful, and in the recovery process many people who go through these shoulder operations might not have the same range of motion or don't find it comfortable to execute certain movements, and archery is one of those things which are heavily affected. So I understand if Lilly has trouble doing a conventional draw and instead needs to start higher to get the right feeling. That makes complete sense. And do bear in mind, as she clarifies in the video, she isn't sky drawing upwards, she's actually just starting really high, which is not unusual. It is something you often see in Olympic archers as well as certain styles of traditional archery. With that said, there are still a few things I want to clarify with the whole high draw technique. Survival Lilly and a few commentators have mentioned that this is a technique used in traditional Japanese archery or kyudo, and that is right and kind of wrong. As I mentioned earlier, one of the risks involved in this kind of comparison is that a lot of people will spot these superficial similarities, not understand the process or why they do that particular technique. One of these superficial similarities, which isn't quite what you think it is, involves that high starting point. So I've got a stretching band here just to simulate a bow. Now, Lilly and others have mentioned that you do see Japanese kyudoka start like this and pull down like this. And this, unfortunately, isn't quite a correct interpretation of this technique. From a front view, if you're looking at the archer from this side, it might look that way. So I'll try and replicate the correct form as close as I can. The idea is basically, when you start with your Yumi bow, you imagine yourself hugging a tree. So you've got your arms out like this, and you're holding a bow and you're stringing this hand. You turn your head this way, so it's fully tense that way. You then raise your arms. You point your bow hand towards the target, and then from this position, you come down into your full draw as far as you can, and then when your body feels at its maximum tension, you release like that. That's the basic process, and bear in mind, I'm not a kyudoka, so I'm not going to be perfectly correct here. But if you look at it from the side, it is not this. It's not starting here, then come down the angle point. So you don't go like that. Instead, what you should be seeing, again, hug the tree, turn your head, and by the way, the stance is very wide. All right, so hug the tree, turn your head, lift the bow, point towards the target, and then you come down like that, and then you release. That's very different to what we're seeing demonstrated in Lilly's video. So the idea where the Japanese archers do this doesn't mean that you can do this and execute it just fine. You can, by the way, but it isn't quite the same, and the processes are quite different. So what I'm pointing out here are a couple of things. Firstly, the amount of angle and height from a Japanese traditional technique is not what we see in Western style or what Lilly's doing. It's actually more like this, more of an angle like that. Secondly, the reason why it's done is because in Japanese archery, you anchor very far back past your ear, whereas in Western archery, you tend to anchor closer to your face. So if you're doing a high draw, the Japanese style, you're basically coming all the way here, right? That is very far back. So part of the reason why you need to do this motion is to get that bow into the position and lock your shoulders together. That's basically the reason why this exists. You don't really need to do this to get to your face, because that's a much different motion. Does it affect her technique? Not necessarily, but just to clarify for those who say that, oh, you saw this used in a different style, therefore it's okay for your style, understand why it's done first. It's not as straightforward as you think it is. Lilly does make a point about the position of the shoulder or the scapula and how it's meant to rotate in a certain position, and she's absolutely correct here. You see this a lot in Olympic style archery. They do emphasize a lot about the correct rotation of the arm and shoulder, and even in traditional styles like in Gao Ying's way of archery, they teach very similar principles in shoulder rotation and back tension. The point about this is that you need to put the weight on the correct strong muscles in the back and shoulder, not the weaker muscles in the arm. Now, the way she describes it is that to get the right rotation with the injury, she needs to come very high and then down this way, which is the correct motion to have. With a normal, smaller, compact technique, as you would see in an Olympic style archer, you often see this. They'll come down low, swing upwards, and then squeeze the back muscle there. So you can hold that almost indefinitely compared to a straight draw. This is very hard on the shoulders, whereas coming a little lower up and locking it in will put the right weight on the right muscles. And that may be what Lilly is struggling with. Putting the injury aside, I think most people can get that shoulder rotation correctly without needing a very high motion. This does, by circumstance, get it in the right position, but it isn't required to do so. So if you're trying to learn a conventional draw, then you can do so without that extra motion. Again, Olympic archers tend to start quite high for that reason. They'll start high above eye level and then draw and then anchor low here and then get that tension in the shoulder there. Do it from the rear view. So they'll start kind of lowish or highish, depending on the preference of the archer. They'll draw back, anchor low, and then go like that. That's a bit more normal. Whereas if you go the high draw route, you start very high above your head and then come down like that. So both ways can get the right shoulder alignment and back tension. So one way I think is more efficient, requires less movement. The second way, which is what Lilly does with the high draw, can achieve the same thing, but most people won't need to do so. That said, I still don't recommend the high draw approach to most people, and the reason is consistency. In watching her shoot in her video, I noticed a few small things which you should think about if you're going to try to replicate this in your shooting. The biggest thing for an archer is consistency, and that means the draw and the anchor point must be exactly the same. In a conventional draw, when you shoot like this, you're going to come quite close to your face. And Lilly does mention very accurately that having a tighter anchor and a tighter release will often result in better accuracy, which is true. If you pluck the string and your hands come out, that will induce more sideways movement, exactly as she said, whereas a straighter line would normally give you the correct follow through and the correct line through your shot. But the anchor point is very, very important, because something we teach for beginners is to keep the head still. You draw the string to your anchor, you don't move your head to the string. So instead of going like this and getting comfortable, you keep your head still, you address the target's in front of you, you lift the bow, and then draw straight to your anchor point. That's how you're meant to do it. Therefore, the problem I see with the high draw, as Lilly does, is that there is a lot of excess movement. It's very hard to get that exact head position and the exact anchor in the movement that she demonstrates. So if you start like this, and by the way, Lilly tends to look away from the target before addressing it, so that there's extra head movement. So you're doing this, and you're basically gambling on how accurately you can get that high draw into your anchor point. And that to me is a bit too loose for an archer. Now, in doing this, you can, with practice, get very consistent with it. But there are so many areas where you might miss the spot. Your head might be in the wrong position. You might be tilted too much. You might not turn it correctly, or you might pull it down too short, or too long, or too far back. That's a little risky in my opinion. In addition, I do notice that in her shooting, she does tend to try to find the anchor point. So she starts off, she looks at the target, and then she comes down, and then she's trying to find it in one extra movement. Again, that sort of thing is fine for short range shooting, where you're not going to have that much spread in your shot. As long as your fundamentals are there, your line is correct, you will still shoot the tight groupings that you saw in the video. But if you are just starting out and you're doing this as your technique, the habit is to release it as soon as you get to what you think is your anchor point, and that can cause a lot of variations. Another reason why I'm a little cautious about the high draw is that it may cause or aggravate injuries. Again, if you're an experienced shooter, you know what it should feel like when you draw the bow back. However, if you do this, you might find yourself using the wrong weight muscles. You might put too much strength or pressure on your front shoulder, which can cause a lot of damage to your rotator cuff. You might not load correctly, even though you are supposedly moving the right direction to get the shoulder in position. A lot of people just draw straight in to the anchor and then keep the tension in the shoulder here, which causes, again, rotator cuff injuries. So even if you do the high draw, you still have to remember to get the arm and elbow drop down to the right position. So yeah, like I said, it might work for Lily because she's practiced it regularly enough, but do be cautious if you want to replicate the same technique, because again, shoulders are very, very vulnerable parts for an archer. Most archery injuries happen in the shoulders because of incorrect weight transfer. Another quick comment to make about her technique is her breathing pattern. I noticed that when she releases, she exhales very sharply. And to me, that implies that she's breathing in and she holds her breath as she shoots. This is quite common for people doing strenuous activities, because breathing in gives you the feeling of more power. So it feels like she's doing this. She begins to draw and she breathes in. And when she lets go, you can hear her breathe out. And again, this is kind of something which most people don't need to worry about, but breathing in is actually the wrong kind of technique, because breathing in does two things to an archer. The first thing it does is that it lifts the diaphragm, and it therefore lifts the shoulders out of alignment. So it's kind of hard to breathe in and keep the shoulders down when your diaphragm and chest are being pushed upwards. So often you'll see Olympic archers breathe out. So they'll breathe in before the draw and then breathe out. And in doing so, the diaphragm drops, and so do the shoulders. The other reason why breathing in can be detrimental is that it increases your heart rate. And when you're trying to get a pinpoint shot on your target, whether it's a target or game, then that increased heart pressure or blood pressure and heart rate will throw off your aim. There's too much movement in your arms, your body is starting to get a little shaky. And I know from my personal experience, especially when wearing a hat, those really tight bucket hats, you can actually feel the throbbing against your skull, and that can really throw you off. So it tires you out very quickly when you hold your breath in. So I'm not sure if Lily's aware of this, but for many people who do archery, breathing out should be the correct motion, not breathing in. You find yourself probably more relaxed that way and better able to execute a steady shot. Apart from that, there's nothing else to say about Lily's technique. She shoots accurately enough for the distances that she trains for. Obviously, she's practiced a lot, and look, she's been shooting longer than I have, so I've got no real right to critique what she does or doesn't do. But like I said, this is more of an add-on, a complement to what she's discussed and pointed out, just from a different point of view. As I said, a lot of things do make sense. A lot of things will work for her considering her shooting style and possibly physical limitations with her injuries. But for those who are trying to learn and replicate the same technique, again, if you have a good reason to and you can make it work, then that's fantastic. Just do bear in mind it does deviate from what most archers do. So as with anything, before you copy it, try to understand how it works, and that way you can make a better judgment call over what works for you. This is NUSensei. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.